Professor Susan Booysen from Wits University now joins us in the studio. Thank you very much, Prof, for coming in. Before we just take a look at the background of sex scandals and which politicians have been affected, let's just start off with Vavi first. Recently, he's been talking about his life is being threatened and that he's reviewing his role in politics. And now this has come out. Is this the end of Vavi's political career?
It is certainly a major problem in his career. We know, as we'll talk about just now, that some people survive these kind of scandals. Vavi is, however, in a very unprotected political terrain where he is on thin ice politically. He has been very forthcoming in his critiques of government, of the predator state, of corruption in government. And he has been on the wrong side of the political divide in a run-up mobilization for Mangaung. So that is very thin ice, it's very contested terrain. Personally, people like that should be extremely careful. He was not careful enough to protect himself against that politically volatile environment.
Away from politics a little bit, for some people in South Africa, Vavi was like represents some moral standard, because he stood up against corruption. He spoke up against corruption. There was a case, I think last year or so, when a company that his wife was involved with got a contract in COSATU, and he acted publicly in a particular way that showed that this man is really against corruption. Now, morally, this must be a very low point for him.
It definitely is, because he has become the symbol for many South Africans of being in the ANC and perhaps electorally loyal to the ANC and to the broader struggle, yet speaking the truth to power and standing up for poor people in adverse circumstances and being that voice of reason. I know many people looked at him and say, there is presidential material, there is the real opposition party of the future. Perhaps he'll survive, but those prospects took a serious dent.
Perhaps he'll survive. Some other politicians in South Africa, including our own President Jacob Zuma, have survived past sex scandals. I mean, let's just take a look at that. I mean, I just get fascinated about this whole issue of political power and sex scandals. We've had many of them that have been through this before.
Yes, it certainly depends what kind of sex scandal as well. We know President Zuma, like here, possibly in the case of Mr. Vavi, the accusations have been rape. In both circumstances, probably very contentious. President Zuma survived it, but he had a whole political movement behind him, smelling power and uniting behind him. So Nzima Vavi comes in with many in ANC against him, certainly not all of them, and many in COSATU being against him. He won't be able to count on that kind of popular uprising of support to carry a person through that. So it can be more difficult for him, depending on a kind of sexually inappropriate charge, whether just harassment or rape charges that are being given.
Many of the cases we've heard about have involved ANC politicians, but there have been other politicians from other parties like the DA, like the IFP, maybe not as prominent as others, who've also been involved in some sex scandals and stuff like that. And also mostly it's like men. And from what you know in this political and sex scandals, women, do they get involved as well, like being, without mentioning names?
Yes, certainly there are fewer women in politics, so the chances are also that fewer women will get into these scandals. Of course, there's so much of the inappropriate relationships happening, but it becomes scandals when it goes public. We know that certainly there are big names, also women in South African politics, who their male employees run for cover when they approach, but it is mostly men.
Yeah. But this Vavi case is going to be very interesting how it pans out in an internal inquiry, especially because the lady in question has not laid rape charges yet. He has laid charges of alleged extortion against him.
Yes. It's going to be very, very multifaceted, the personal, the professional, the political, all of these dimensions cross-cutting in this. It's possibly going to be a very contracted and complicated case unless charges are withdrawn, unless there is some peace settlement between them.
Thank you very much. We'll have to leave you there. That's Professor Susan Booysen from Wits University.
News that moves. ENCA.com.